Ohioans celebrate or brace for President Trump's second round. Welcome to Columbus on the Record. I'm Mike Thompson. The second Trump era has begun. Americans and Ohioans are watching the first days of the Trump administration. Some watch with a sense of joy and satisfaction, some with a sense of fear and disbelief, and some, probably most, with a skeptical sense of curiosity as to what the future holds. The president took the oath Monday in the Capitol Rotunda. He was surrounded by his family, his supporters, and the kings of big tech. He proclaimed the start of a new golden age of America, ending what he called the country's period of decline.
As we gather today, our government confronts a crisis of trust. For many years, a radical and corrupt establishment has extracted power and wealth from our citizens while the pillars of our society lay broken and seemingly in complete disrepair.
Joe Moss, Lincoln's second inaugural, this was not. There was malice toward many and charity for very few. As an immigrant yourself and as someone who has very much advocated for the immigrant community here in Ohio, right, how are you viewing what happened this week and how is the community viewing it?
I expected as much, but I expected a little bit more clarity and focus on the immigration issue. What we have seen, however, is kind of a shotgun approach, including agencies you didn't even know that were going to be a problem, such as FEMA, World Health Organization, that now we're in a one-year withdrawal clock from that, the Paris Accord. So it's a bunch of different things. On the immigration side, what I predicted is exactly what's happening. He's discovering that it's a difficult thing for him to do what he promised to do, and it was all based on lies. The fact that, according to him, that these are criminals and people that are dangerous to America. And instead, what we're seeing is raiding workplaces. What else can he do?
Have there been any, we've heard rumors for the past couple of days of raids in central Ohio. Have there been any actions?
No.
That you know of?
No, there haven't. But the rumors are there in social media. And I've received several of people that said, oh, ICE has been seen over by the grocery stores on Morse Road. The problem is that ICE doesn't drive marked cars to begin with. Usually they are white or black Suburbans, that kind of a thing. Yeah. And that's about half the cars on the road.
Gene, so how are you viewing this, and how you come from far western Ohio, rural area? Mm-hmm. How are your neighbors viewing this past week?
So first of all, a little bit of a data point here is immigration is a very emotional issue. Anytime a country gets more than about 11% of the population being non-native born, many of the native borns become twitchy, and we're about 14%. And so this is a universal, been well studied, but nobody talks about this. So the goal is, what we need to do is recognize this and begin to work to do it. The core problem is, and I've said this on the show before, is all about how you view the American pie. If you think the American pie with each new immigrant who comes in grows, they lend their voices, their talents, and the American pie becomes bigger, and your slice of the American pie can become bigger in turn, then you're in favor of immigrants. But if you have a zero-sum view of America, that you have not been able to achieve all you can achieve. This is what my neighbors tell me, that they view every new immigrant as taking a small piece of their part of the pie, and they're angry about it. And they're going for, and as far as Trump, they're going, oh, deport them all. We don't care what it costs. They think they're going to do better because they think then they'll have more of that pie.
Yeah. Jake, at the State House, how are some of these programs could affect how state lawmakers do their work, changes to how Medicaid can be administered. There's talk of reducing incentives for electric cars and these charging stations that Governor DeWine has been trying to roll out around the state. How are state lawmakers viewing the past week in this plethora of moves?
So I think energy is at the top of mind in the State House right now, and there are a lot of signals that they're getting. I mean, it's pretty explicit from the president, drill, baby, drill. The state is rolling out legislation, it came out just yesterday, that is really going to, in all likelihood, expand natural gas generation in Ohio, and that's contingent on federal policy. And whether there's some kind of explicit agreement or an understanding, a swapping of signals back and forth. I think it's coming pretty clear from both ends here that it's natural gas season in Ohio.
But that's going to hurt coal, right? If natural gas expands, it's already been hurting coal for the past 10, 15 years.
I would say that there are economic forces hurting coal, that there are any much more than any policy answer.
So how do you keep up, Joe?
You know, it's really interesting, and I always appreciate Gene's perspective and clarity on, and he actually gave you both sides on the sides of the pie. It's amazing how many social and political issues here can be reduced to the question of our inability to redistribute wealth adequately in this country. And there are many ways of doing that. Private industry can do it on their own, maybe with the aid of unions, or you do it through taxation.
Or I would say a little bit of a nuance, which not saying you're wrong, maybe redistribution of opportunity. And so for my neighbors and relatives, which is the same thing, they do not feel like they've been given enough opportunities. And so it's an interesting thing as we go through this. But if you're sitting there and you're college educated, you're comfortable in your abilities, you know that you can handle whatever the economy throws at you. You can adapt and you can compete with whoever walks ever through the Statue of Liberty.
How about tariffs, Gene? Ohio farmers have benefited from NAFTA.
Yes.
Technology businesses have benefited
Yes.
in Ohio. They've benefited from NAFTA. If you start a tariff war, how does that affect farmers, and what are their thoughts?
Oh, it's just going to be devastating to them. And they know that. But at the same time, this is one of the great misconceptions of politics. Everybody says, oh, is the economy stupid? It's not really. It's the values. And so when the farmers hear Trump talk certain values, they go, those are my values too. I'm going to vote for him, even though I know and acknowledge it's going to hurt my bottom line. It'll hurt all my neighbors too in that type of competitive market.
Is that hurt on the bottom line still kind of, it's not real yet? It hasn't really. They don't have the increase in revenue yet.
Well, they saw it happen when he did tariffs in his first term, but then he went and then ladled out money through USDA.
Yeah. And it turns out the Chinese then started buying soybeans from Brazil.
Right.
So it blew up that particular industry.
Any concern at the State House about the electric car industry? Honda is retooling or building plants here in Ohio for its new electric car models. There's a battery plant south of Columbus that's making batteries for electric cars. If Trump takes away the incentives on electric cars, it's going to hurt that segment of the economy, right, Jake?
I think the reality is that economics are not animating this issue. This is a cultural issue. We want coal, we want fossil fuels. Electric vehicles and solar is for the liberals, it's for the Democrats, that's not us. So I don't think there's someone weighing the market forces, looking at the jobs and economic impact. I think this is deeper seated than that.
I did notice watching the national championship game on Monday night, President Trump had just finished his address during halftime, I think. And almost like 4 or 5 ads after that were about Mercedes and Chevy electric cars. So during a college football national championship game. So the market may win out here.
Their market is college educated.
Market usually does.
The race for Ohio governor has another candidate. This one is not a surprise. Attorney General Dave Yost signaled for months he wanted to succeed Mike DeWine. This week, he made it official, becoming the first major Republican to announce his campaign. He likely will face former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy and maybe State Treasurer Robert Sprague in next year's GOP primary. Ramaswamy's brief tenure in the Trump administration has ended. Reports from Politico and others say Elon Musk no longer wanted to share leadership of the so-called Department of Government Efficiency and forced Ramaswamy out. Politico reports the two men were not getting along, and the final straw was Ramaswamy's social media posts critical of Americans' lack of math and science prowess. Gene Krebs will get to Ramaswamy in a minute, but Dave Yost, he's got a very good resume. Delaware County prosecutor, 8 years as auditor. It will be 8 years as AG when that election comes around in 2026. But he's thought of as kind of an underdog in this race.
Which I find baffling because statistically, the most common path in America to be governor is to first be attorney general. It's the most common path. And he has spent, 16 years out there doing Lincoln Day dinners. He's done a remarkably good job of keeping his weight down with all the chicken dinners he's had to do. Bad chicken dinners too, let me tell you. But no, and he's been putting together a policy team for some time. Right now, as of today, he's by far and away the front runner. And when you talk about Vivek, I'll tell you why.
Well, continue.
Up until a month ago, I would have said it was Vivek. He was going to be, because he's loved by Trump. Well, now we're not so sure. But once again, basically, he called all of my people mediocre. And all Yost has to do is put that out there on Facebook ads, just put that little quote, and I'm going, and personally, I'll tell you, I'd like to compare my CV to his, and we'll talk about who's truly a Renaissance man or not.
Jake, this was not a surprise. Dave Yost has looked at this for a long time. Is he hopeful? Is he banking on getting Donald Trump's endorsement in this race?
I don't know. Honestly, I question the value. I think Donald Trump's, not non-endorsement, but anti-endorsement almost. If you have Donald Trump thumbing the scales against you, you have a very real political problem. As far as Donald Trump endorsing candidate A but not candidate B, I question the effect of that. I think it's more of a myth. It's like an emperor has no clothes situation. It's what we make it to be.
J.D. Vance, though, for sure. Probably.
Hard to say. It's hard to say. I'm always a little skeptical. But on Vivek, I'd say that I think he's a more promising candidate. I think like there's always a certain amount of, he's animated, he's colorful, he's a little quirky, but I don't think he should be so quickly left off.
How do you view this, Joe?
Well, I tell you how I view it with respect to two ways. With respect to the Trump endorsement, Trump loves to endorse people that already have visibility. And in that respect, then you've got Vivek's ahead because he is unusual. Let's call it by what it is. On the other hand, I think Dave Yost has been preparing for this moment. I don't think that he has anything in the closet that is going to be popping out and it will be a particular problem. I have a problem with him in that he tends to blame immigration for crime at times. I'm disappointed in him. I've known him for a long time. But at the same time, he has done some other things that are very positive with respect to lawsuits that have resulted in resources here in Ohio that the nonprofits have been able to benefit from.
Normally on this show, I keep my emotions in check, but you saw right there, I am profoundly, personally offended by Ramaswamy's statements. And I think the rest of my folks out in Western Ohio, when they hear about this, and I expect Yost, if he's smart, to make sure they know about it, they will be going, there's a reason why Ramaswamy only got 7.5% in Iowa's primaries for president.
But what if Donald Trump endorses him, Gene? What if he says, he's my guy, he misspoke, he didn't mean it, he's challenging us to do better?
But this goes, so Joe is almost right when he says he likes to do celebrities and stuff. He also likes to do people who he thinks are going to win. And now it's not certain that I think Ramaswamy is going to win because of that. The self-inflicted wounds are always the worst.
Jake?
If I could make two quick points
Sure.
here. For one, on Vivek, yeah, he did 7% in Iowa. It's not a winning number, but actually, when you think back to 2020 and think, who is this guy? Nobody knew who he was, and there he was winning a substantial percentage of the vote. On Dave Yost, he does have this plum opportunity. The way the timing is going to work out, he's probably going to have a former Fortune 500 CEO on trial. That's populism right there. I mean, that's something that people have talked, we got to try the CEOs. Dave Yost will have a CEO under oath in all likelihood.
As long as it doesn't start blowing back on lawmakers and state officials. This is the First Energy CEO.
Yes.
That's to his advantage. Building upon what Jake just brought up here, that's to his advantage. And that's why I have to go. A month ago, Ramaswamy. Now, Yost.
Robert Sprague, is he looking for a lieutenant governor, or does he have a chance?
He's a really nice guy. What he's hoping for is that Yost, he's already seen Ramaswamy blow up. He's hoping that something happens to Yost. If so, Bob Sprague is an excellent candidate and would do an excellent job, but I still just see at this time Yost overpowering him because he's the AG and goes to what Jake says.
Of course, you got Democrats, too. They have the run against. Amy Acton is one. There'll probably be others as this campaign.
So far.
And we're just starting 2025. It is over almost 2 years away. Anyway.
Hey, it's a year before filing deadline.
Educating Ohio students from kindergarten through college remains a big focus of the new Ohio legislature. First to the younger students, new House Speaker Matt Huffman doubts the state can pay for the K-12 schools plan as it has for the past few years. Huffman says the plan passed 4 years ago and cost $2 billion is unsustainable, and paying for it in next year's budget is, quote, fantasy. Huffman told reporters using the money to pay for private school vouchers is a better deal for taxpayers. Public school advocates and teachers union leaders say Huffman has an obligation to meet the state's constitutional mandate of an education system that is fully and fairly funded. Jake Zuckerman, is this just reality hitting at the State House that for 4 years they funded this program, but now COVID money's gone, economy is slowing a little bit, we're just not going to have the money? Or is there something deeper going on here?
Well, I think over the last few years, yeah, like you mentioned, there was so much federal money coming down for the federal government. So there was this sense of, no, these two things aren't in competition. We can expand funding for private schools and we can expand funding for public schools. You're being disingenuous to conflate those two things. But now that money is dried up, it's not coming in, and the state has to pass a balanced budget. And I think since that statement, there has been a lot of pushback. It really has sent a signal up in the air of these two things are clearly in competition. There are only so many dollars in the till. I'd be lying if I said if I knew how it's going to end. I'd say that in the House, there are a lot of pro-labor, pro-public education Republicans, but Matt Huffman is arguably one of, I'd say, no, without a doubt, the single biggest champion of voucher dollars in the state of Ohio.
Gene, when public school districts all around the state start seeing fewer dollars or less dollars than they thought they were going to get, that's going to be hard to sell at the State House, right?
And the other big issue at the State House is property tax relief. And if you're going to cut state spending, you will eventually get more local issues going up on the ballot to fund schools. So this is totally counterproductive. And is completely against DeRolf. And I know that the proponents of the DeRolf decision, which ruled Ohio school system unconstitutional, and I urge everybody to find this Sweeney decision and read it. It's actually pretty well written, pretty good. This is completely counter to it. And they need to be de-emphasizing the importance of local property tax and not emphasizing it. This is taking the reverse.
You know, it's amazing every time that these funding questions come up. Somehow the answer always seems to be diverting the funds away from public schools, which I think is one of the greatest institutions that this country has ever mounted, to then fund private schools that may have a little bit of a different agenda or maybe a different cultural or political perspective than the public schools might have. I think it's a red herring, but nevertheless, it's where we are.
Joe, the argument is that some school districts spend a lot of money, you know, on average, Columbus being one, over $30,000 per student. What responsibility do these local districts, especially urban districts, have to find ways to cut money or use the money they have more efficiently to get better results?
Well, we know it's a societal problem. It's not just what happens in the school, but it's what happens after school. There are different parts of the city being, you know, sort of a microcosm of the universe. There are parts of the city where kids enrich their lives during summer time, and there are other ones that the poor kids are home alone and watching TV and unsupervised. Until we address those societal problems, I think that the problems with education just cannot be addressed adequately in the schools.
Where is the political power here, Jake? I mean, teachers' unions have power. Religious groups have power with trying to get money for charter schools or private schools with religious leanings. What about parents and business leaders? What about the Vivek Ramaswamy folks who say, you know, he said it inartfully, but we have been falling behind in math and science. Those folks have any political power at all in this debate?
I mean, my sense is there's a power shift away from these teachers' unions towards parents and towards these religious private schools. I think that Matt Huffman is the living embodiment of that.
Gene, what about business leaders who say, we don't have the workers, they don't have the training, they don't have the education we need? Where do they fall into this debate?
They're going to need to make their voices heard, and they're going to have to emphasize their local trade schools their non-traditional high schools that a lot of kids go through to learn the trades. That's not being done by private schools, religious schools. But the key thing is that let's face it, China and India each have 4 times the number of people than what we do, yet we consistently have a huge population out there of the poor that we do not do enough to help lift them up and be able to help, and a program won't do it. We have to find out why they're poor. They have to find out why they're poor and help lift them up.
Higher ed reform is apparently the Ohio Senate's top priority. Its first piece of legislation, Senate Bill 1, would ban DEI programs on public college and university campuses. It would also ban faculty strikes, and professors would be evaluated based on their fostering of an environment of diversity of ideas. Conservative lawmakers have long complained that college faculty promote a liberal agenda. Faculty groups denounce the bill. They say it threatens academic freedom and will have a chilling effect on campus. Jake Zuckerman, this bill was in the last session. It was watered down a bit, still didn't pass, but now it's back in its original form.
Yeah, I mean, it was in the last general session, but now you have the former Senate president in charge of the House where the problems seem to lie. So there's a big champion over there. One thing I'd want to add to explain about the bill is it technically the language applies to institutions, but institutions are made up of people. And it says these institutions cannot pass on quote unquote controversial beliefs. Some examples, the most striking one to me, in fact, is climate change, which is a scientific fact. Whether or not you like it, don't like it, disagree with it, whatever, it is a fact. But while we're legislating it into a controversial belief, and at schools, places of fact, reason, thought, are now suddenly, there's this nebulous language there that says, well, you can't push these controversial beliefs. And what do you do if you teach a science class and you're supposed to teach facts, but suddenly facts are controversial? I think that's where we're pushing our schools toward.
DEI has become, I wouldn't say public enemy number 1, but it's like third. I think you have inflation, you have immigration and immigrants, and now DEI programs is the third.
Isn't that and Mike, the problem is that I quite frankly can't understand exactly what the problem is. So I'm probably the worst person in the world to try to justify one thing versus the other. But I will tell you that I'm extraordinarily concerned about some of the elements of this bill, which I think are it's clearly infringing upon freedom of speech. I mean, institutes of higher learning are supposed to be places where you discuss a variety of things, not necessarily all in the same classroom, which is what I think that they're trying to get accomplished. And it also suggests a system, the Latin American system of higher education, which quite frankly is not, well, I'm critical of, and that is where the students invite the professors to come back and lecture, so that the students have control over what the agenda is going to be. I don't think it's a good idea.
Long criticism at college campuses that too far left, Gene. And it's only been like 10 years or so since you were on a college campus, but did you feel that you were quieted, you couldn't speak up your minds on a college campus?
No, but what this issue really is about is ownership. Who owns higher ed in Ohio? And I go back to 1993 at a meeting at Miami University, used to be in my district, and I posed the question at an assemblage of administrators, who owns Miami? And after some consternation, they said, well, we do. And I said, that's the problem. I can't go to the general public and ask for more money for Miami because they don't feel any ownership, because their kid, they spend good money to send their kid here, and they get a grad student for whom English may be their third language, and they just don't do a good job. And the other thing is, now what you're getting is professors who don't show up at the class personally, but they literally do it remotely. And this is not why, so it's the ownership issue. And until higher ed deals with that, they're in trouble.
Will this bill pass, do you think, Jake?
I can't see into the future, but I think the stars are kind of aligning on this one, so I want to say yes. One thing I'd add here is that this bill imagines that the problem is coming from the schools, the institution, the professors. But when you actually listen to both the sponsors of the bill, and I've just asked some conservative friends of mine, the problem is the culture with the students. So this is a bill that's focused on the schools, when it seems like if there is this liberal bias on campus. It's coming from the students. You can't legislate students.
They always start Democrats and they turn Republican as they get older, right? Let's get to our final off-the-record parting shots. Joe Mouse, you're up first.
Mike, you know that on Tuesday, Episcopal Bishop of D.C., Mary Ann Bude, issued a heartfelt plea to the new president that he show mercy to those who are most vulnerable. The Catholic Conference of Bishops did the same thing on Thursday, and this coming Sunday is going to be the first time after the new administration announced that churches are not going to be safe places for immigration roundup. And I call upon local clerics, I call upon Bishop Earl Fernandez of the Catholic Archdiocese to speak up on this matter.
Gene.
There's an emerging issue coming forward. About a month ago, the Washington Examiner, which is a very conservative newspaper, came out with a story about increasingly Democrats are using spoiler candidates. If you see an example here in Ohio, was a Libertarian candidate up in the Marcy Kaptur seat. They funded with millions of dollars. That's going to show up in our governor's race.
Okay. Jacob.
In that big energy bill I mentioned, there is actually a surprise Easter egg in there. There is a repeal of a roughly $800 million coal plant bailout. So if that actually makes it over the finish line, Ohio is getting rid of a coal bailout. Who saw that one coming?
Interesting. My off-the-record comment, we make fun of the Blue Jackets on this show once in a while, but now that the Buckeyes have won the national championship, it's time to pay attention to other sports, and the Blue Jackets are playing pretty darn well right now, so check them out. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Don't forget you can watch us anytime on your time at our website and YouTube and a PBS video app. For our crew and our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.